Industry trends dictate to a large extent the methods used in feeding and managing horses. It is fairly common knowledge in the horse industry that significant early development must be attained by foals that are destined to become halter futurity contenders, as well as for young horses that will enter race training as yearlings. Horsemen also recognize that marketing potential often hinges on evidence of significant early growth. Even in those areas of the horse industry where significant early development is not nearly as important, there still exists the prerequisite that young horses develop soundly for longevity and usefulness as a mature performing athlete. An important decision for horse owners is whether young horses are to be fed for moderate or rapid growth. Either rate of growth produces mature horses that are as big as their genetic base will allow. However, rapidly growing horses are developed sooner in the total growth process, meaning that their mature height and weight will be reached much earlier than those fed for moderate rates of growth. Perhaps the biggest concern among horsemen attempting to promote early growth in horses is the occurrence of bone and joint disorders, commonly referred to throughout the industry as developmental orthopedic disease. This includes epiphysitis, osteochondrosis, and others. Common symptoms of DOD include enlargements and deformities in the ankle, knees, and hocks, as well as contracted tendons, a situation where foals exhibit pulling up in the pasterns. Some horses never develop visible signs of DOD, while others have problems with appearance or lameness that interfere with growth and performance. Developmental orthopedic disease appears to be heritable. Some horses have a genetic predisposition for fast growth and large mature size, and horses often develop skeletal problems regardless of the manner in which they are managed. However, there are two other causes of skeletal misdevelopment. These include nutrient imbalances and excessive forced exercise in confined horses. Often it is a combination of management situations that contributes to many of the skeletal problems observed in the horse industry. The frequency with which such cases occur in horses genetically predisposed to skeletal problems has given many people the misconception that those horses fed for early growth will become unsound later in life. However, there are no data to support this, and there is no reason why either moderate or rapid development cannot be achieved in most young horses in a manner that ensures they will develop to be structurally sound as mature individuals. Adequate supply of major nutrients is important in promoting growth. To help avoid problems with skeletal growth, diets for young horses should be carefully formulated. Nutrients such as protein, calcium, phosphorus, other minerals and vitamins must be provided in correct amounts relative to each other and in balance with the amount of energy or fuel a horse is eating. Inadequate concentrations of protein, minerals, and vitamins relative to the energy concentration in a diet may result in skeletal problems for young horses. Growing horses fed high amounts of energy in the presence of inadequate amounts of protein, minerals, and other important nutrients can often deposit excessive amounts of fat too early in life. Sometimes this occurs at the expense of normal skeletal development. There are some feelings in the industry that high-energy diets by themselves cause skeletal misdevelopment in young horses. However, research has failed to show that high-energy diets alone are a cause for skeletal problems in young horses, provided those diets contain suitable amounts of protein, minerals, and other important nutrients. Very simply, when energy is limited, growth will be limited, but when energy is available, growth will be enhanced. However, it's extremely important to keep in mind that those young horses being developed for rapid early growth have a greater total requirement for protein and minerals to support the amount of energy that they are eating. This is very important in feeding young horses for rapid early growth. Deficiencies of certain trace minerals have been implicated as contributing to developmental orthopedic disease. Although trace mineral needs of young growing horses are not completely known, it is suggested that the young horse should be fed concentrate feeds that contain adequate, balanced amounts of trace mineral salt. These are generally added in high-quality commercial feeds, but horsemen preparing mixes on the farm will need to select trace mineralized salt or a vitamin trace mineral premix for incorporation into the diets that they are mixing. A variety of energy feeds can be used in formulating a balanced concentrate. Oats are very popular and used frequently in most commercial feeds. Other energy-dense grains such as corn, barley, or sorghum can also be used effectively. Compared to oats, these feeds provide more energy per unit of weight and will meet requirements in a lesser amount of total daily feed. Regardless of which sources of energy are fed, they must be accompanied by sufficient sources of nutrients to provide suitable protein quality and needed vitamins and minerals. Many horse owners mix commercial feed with some other cereal grains such as oats or corn. This practice, referred to as cutting, drastically alters the nutrient balance of the final diet and can ultimately contribute to growth problems in young horses. Fats and oils can be used to increase the energy density of a grain mix. Most horse feeds contain approximately 3% natural fat, which is usually shown on the feed tag. Some commercial feeds contain supplemental fat. Horse owners should bear in mind that manually top dressing fat or oil onto a balanced feed dilutes the total nutrient balance of the feed. Therefore, care should be taken to properly balance the ration if fat or oil will be added to the diet for young growing horses. Protein supplements such as soybean meal, cottonseed meal, and linseed meals can be used to increase protein content when formulating rations. Because of its higher lysine concentration, soybean meal provides better growth rates than cottonseed meal at the same level of intake. However, cottonseed meal can be used provided at least half of the supplemental protein comes from soybean meal or if synthetic amino acids are used to correct deficiencies in specific amino acids. Grass or legume hays of high quality work well in meeting roughage needs of horses. Horsemen should avoid all hay that contains any amount of mold. Alfalfa can contain blister beetles. The beetles contain a compound called cantharidin, which is highly toxic to horses. Horse owners should consult with the hay producer to determine whether attempts were taken to avoid blister beetles. Careful selection of quality feedstuffs and accurate formulation will help ensure that the juvenile skeleton develops adequately as body weight increases. This is extremely important in industry situations where young horses are receiving forced exercise. Young horses being fitted and conditioned for sales, futurities, and pre-race training must develop skeletally, but they must also remodel bone in response to work. Accurate ration formulation and feeding will not guarantee that young horses will be free of developmental problems, but it will eliminate the possible nutritional effects on these growth problems that influence marketability and/or success of the young equine athlete. Even though broodmares have the ability to produce large amounts of milk, the nutritional density of the milk declines as lactation advances. The energy produced in a mare's milk may not meet the energy requirements for a foal at 4 months of age, and it's possible that this deficit occurs even earlier than 4 months. Nursing foals show an interest in eating soon after birth, often consuming small amounts of feed from the mare's trough. However, a marked difference exists between requirements of the mare and nutrient needs of the foal. Thus, a creep ration should be provided. Foals that will weigh 1,100 pounds at maturity have the ability to gain from 2.5 to 3 pounds daily, and there is good opportunity to take advantage of early growth potential. Creep feeders can be constructed in a pasture or corral, but special emphasis should be placed on making them mare-proof. Feeders located in areas where mares normally congregate and providing easy access by foals will facilitate feed consumption and minimize chances for injury to foals. Creep feed should be introduced slowly and eventually be available for foals on a free choice basis. Having free access to creep feed improves the likelihood that feed will be consumed in small meals rather frequently, which is similar to the manner in which a foal nurses. Regular daily checks will be needed to monitor this situation and to guard against feed becoming spoiled by weather, rodents, or other factors. Careful management is a necessity, especially where several foals are eating out of the same feeder. In some cases, one foal may become highly dominant and consume large amounts of creep feed while preventing the other foals a chance to even enter the feeder. This table shows the percentage of protein, calcium, and phosphorus needed in typical concentrates that contain no supplemental fat. The concentration of protein, minerals, and vitamins needed in a good creep feed is influenced by the amount of energy or calories a young foal will eat. Feed tags do not usually indicate how many calories are in a feed, but they do list the percentages of crude fiber and fat. Both fiber and fat are indicators of caloric density and can be used to determine the minimum amounts of protein and minerals that should be in the feed. As mentioned earlier, supplemental fat increases the total energy density of a grain mix. Therefore, at a given crude fiber level, percentages of protein and minerals need to be higher than that for a grain mix or concentrate that contains no supplemental fat. Percentages of protein, calcium, and phosphorus that are needed in feeds of varying amounts of crude fiber containing supplemental fat are shown in this table. Feed tags will always show the percentage of crude protein, but may or may not include percentages of minerals. Feed purchasers should ask the retailer for additional information or call the manufacturer directly to obtain this information. From a practical standpoint, creep feeds should always contain at least 16% crude protein, 0.8% calcium, and at least 0.5% phosphorus. When lesser amounts are provided, it becomes difficult for young horses to consume enough protein, particularly the amino acid lysine, and minerals in a reasonable amount of daily feed. As mentioned previously, young foals often start out eating from the same trough with the mare and continue to do so as they grow. Even though many of these broodmare feeds have suitable protein and calcium to phosphorus ratios for mares, they simply do not meet the requirements of foals. Relative to the amount of energy that's provided in a typical broodmare diet, such feeds often provide no more than 90% of the protein and 65% of the calcium needed by the young foal. Such a feeding program also results in foals receiving deficient amounts of lysine, which is the primary growth-limiting amino acid. Consequently, many young horses will consume enough energy to gain weight while receiving an inadequate nutrient supply for proper growth and skeletal development. The result is often fat foals with improperly developed musculoskeletal systems. Therefore, in the absence of creep feeding a balanced foal ration, the only way to really avoid such a situation would be to feed broodmares a grain mix that will meet the nutrient requirements of the foal. In most cases, however, it will be more economical to creep feed the foal in a separate feeder. Even where foals do have access to a balanced feed, careful observation should be used to make sure that foals do not sort through the feed, consuming an unbalanced diet. Tendencies for foals to be picky eaters have prompted some horsemen to choose completely pelleted creep rations, such that every bite is a balanced mouthful. Pelleted creep feeds are very usable and should be used in preference to textured feeds when sorting is a problem with young horses. Contrary to some opinions, feeding pelleted feeds is not harmful to horses if the feeds are of top quality and they are pelleted firm enough to force the horses to chew the pellets. Research has shown that gradually weaned foals will exhibit less stress than abruptly weaned foals. Regardless of when foals are weaned, the transition will likely be smoother and foal performance will be maximized if creep feeding techniques have been previously employed. Many weanlings and yearlings are placed in confinement to undergo a fitting program of some type. Where young horses are stalled and given forced exercise, nutrient balance of the diet is a special concern to minimize joint disorders associated with that type of a management program. Exercise is important for skeletal strength and development. However, the young horse must have an adequate supply of protein and minerals to use for increased skeletal remodeling that occurs in response to work. It is important to recognize that many of these young horses must lay down bone in support of both growth and exercise. When nutrient supply is inadequate, young horses will produce weak, fibrous bone rather than strong, dense bone. An exclusive diet of oats and alfalfa hay for horses continues to be popular among many horsemen. While both are excellent feedstuffs, a 70 to 30 ratio of oats to alfalfa hay provides only 86% of the needed lysine and 81% of the calcium needed by a weanling. relative to the caloric density of that diet. This does not mean that oats and alfalfa hay should not be fed as part of the daily diet. However, the diet is unbalanced and nutrient supplementation is needed to minimize chances of swollen facies, joints, and other skeletal problems. In one study, growth in horses fed straight oats and alfalfa was compared to growth achieved from a balanced concentrate that was fed also with alfalfa hay. Horses eating only oats and alfalfa tended to get fatter, while those eating the balanced concentrate tended to gain more wither height. Young horses can be developed equally as well using either grass or legume roughage. The type and quality of hay or grazing that is available will influence the nutrient concentration needed in the grain or concentrate mix. Research has shown that high-quality alfalfa is more digestible than grass hay, but good quality grass hay is more digestible than average quality alfalfa. The added bloom that some horse owners recognize when feeding alfalfa is due to the additional energy and protein compared to many grass hays. This desired appearance can be achieved with grass roughage by ensuring that the grain mix has been balanced according to the nutrient content of the hay that is being fed. Young horses that have access to good quality alfalfa hay will generally require lesser amounts of protein and calcium in the concentrate mix. However, rations should be formulated to ensure the grain mix contains at least as much calcium as phosphorus and adequate protein to meet amino acid requirements. Although alfalfa is much higher in calcium than grass hays, research has indicated that some of the calcium may be unavailable. Also, even though alfalfa contains more crude protein than grass hay, much of that protein is not available to the horse in the form of amino acids needed for growth. Yearlings not being fitted for sales, futurities, or early training can be developed at a moderate rate of growth on all forage diets. However, forage availability is very important and will play as major a role as forage quality in determining growth rates. Those yearlings being fitted or conditioned and receiving forced exercise will require a combination of roughage and concentrate, regardless of whether moderate or rapid growth is desired. Even the most carefully balanced grain mix will only be as effective as the feeding management program in which it is used. Hay and grain intake by horses will vary according to the individual and will be influenced by amounts of exercise. Visual observation of horses on a daily basis is a good way to monitor body condition, and horsemen must increase or decrease feed allowance based on a horse's appearance. It must be remembered, however, that all horses' requirements are on a weight rather than a volume basis. Increases in feed intake should be made gradually, making sure of adequate hay intake. Epiphysitis, osteochondrosis, and some expressions of contracted tendons may result when young horses eat unbalanced diets and also receive excessive amounts of forced exercise in very deep footing. Obviously, horses being conditioned for shows or sales must be kept in confinement and receive work, but the manner in which they are worked is very important. Higher intensity, harder work should be introduced gradually to encourage proper bone remodeling. Sudden changes in stress will cause the skeletal system to remodel bone, and it takes time to develop the needed strength. The conditioning program for young horses should provide adequate free exercise if at all possible. Some conditioning programs alternate intense work with free exercise and less intense work on a weekly basis in order to allow time for bone remodeling to occur. It's extremely important to keep in mind that the skeletal system must be developed first and the muscular system later. The skeletal system of the young horse is best stimulated by short work periods on firm footing, followed by free exercise on soft footing. It's important to keep in mind that excessive forced or free exercise on firm footing may cause undue trauma to the juvenile skeleton. Raising young horses that are sound and competitive in today's horse industry requires a highly tuned feeding and management program. Some horses possess a genetic propensity for skeletal defects, and skeletal misdevelopment may be observed when those horses are fed for rapid early development. but in many cases, skeletal disorders are the result of nutrient imbalances which precipitate abnormal bone metabolism. When combined with excessive forced exercise and deep footing, skeletal problems may occur. There is no reason to expect that rapid early growth by itself will cause skeletal disease and lameness in horses if horses are free of genetic defects. Time taken to formulate or purchase and feed properly balanced rations will improve the horse owner's success rate for growing young horses and help in the total effort to produce a horse that is sound and useful at maturity.